have from United Water, Elizabeth Watson and Chris Len, and I don't know whether they intend to speak collectively or individually.
Elizabeth Watson and George Lapatelli.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've never known what United Water.
Thank you.
Oh, it's my eyesight, I apologize.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Watson, and this is George Lapatelli. We're from United Water. I'm energy manager at United Water, and George is senior project manager. We have been working on a few hydropower projects, exploring opportunities for all types of renewable energy, but given that we're a water company, hydro definitely fits within the framework of our business. As such, we've been reviewing legislation for net metering in New Jersey and found that there's some opportunities to open up legislation to allow net metering for hydropower projects. So surprisingly, New Jersey is one of only 5 states in the country that does not allow hydropower to be net metered. If you don't know what net metering is, it's basically producing power on a site and crediting it towards a electricity use at that site. It could be site-specific, or as the state of New York has done, it could be remote net metered, so that hydropower on one site is produced and is credited towards another site that's using power, that needs the power. And if you think about the way hydro systems are typically set up in the landscape, when we have an opportunity to gain hydropower, so for example, maybe in a distribution system where there's pipes flowing downhill, you can gather the hydropower from that. Or when it's dammed as part of a water reservoir or stormwater protection, you usually don't need the electricity on that site. If you're having water flow downhill, you don't need to pump it. The sites where you need the electricity are pumping. Pumping uses about 90% of the electricity use in a water distribution and treatment system. So we're proposing that New Jersey considers opening up net metering for hydro, specifically allowing remote net metering, and it would be similar. We're hoping something similar to the New York legislation that was just passed. And what it would do is it would allow projects like George and I have been working on reopening the Dundee Dam Hydro Project. There's also several other similar projects around the state that are not financially feasible because of this restriction on net metering. So it doesn't, we're not even asking for like a huge grant or anything like that. It's really just bringing hydro up to the same level of net metering as other renewable technologies. So, any other comments that you have, George?
No, I just wanted to say that we're speaking on behalf of the Dundee Water, Power, and Land Company, which is co-owned 50-50 by North Jersey District Water Supply Commission and United Water. And we got permission from them to come speak today.
Thank you for your consideration. And any questions, comments, concerns? Thank you. Okay, thanks.
Chris, I apologize. Chris Len is with the Baykeeper. Is it the Newark Baykeeper?
No, sadly there is no Newark Baykeeper, but I'll tell them.
Okay, thank you.
My handwriting is very poor.
And my eyesight, so that combination.
Our group's names are very prolix. If you got to email me, it's like 35 minutes of typing just to get the email address written. I'm Chris Len. I'm the staff attorney for Hackensack Riverkeeper and New York, New Jersey Baykeeper. And our job is to look after the biological, ecological integrity of our respective watersheds. And so the discussions that we're having here today are very important to the kind of work that we do in our groups. And so I'm pleased that the council is holding this hearing and taking comments from people like me and thinking about these issues very carefully. It's nice to see green infrastructure becoming more and more important in New Jersey. I feel like it's only been a couple of years since the idea of green infrastructure was pretty novel to regulators and regulated in New Jersey. And now that we're considering it as a cost-effective solution to a lot of our stormwater problems, I think that that is a great advancement in the way that we look at these issues. In thinking about this, and particularly our groups have been involved in CSO work, trying to get better permits and better controls for combined sewer overflows. It occurs to me, I guess, first of all, that you have to start to do something before you can finish it. And New Jersey has allowed itself to put off the starting of these programs for far too long. And to the extent that we're starting them now, I think that's great. But if you look at a town like Portland, Oregon, or Providence, Rhode Island, or Atlanta, Georgia, where many years ago they started to address their CSO problems through green infrastructure. Portland, I believe, has one or fewer CSOs anymore in a year, and it rains a lot there. And I know I went to law school there, and it rained on me about, I don't know, 200 days out of the year. So their great advantage over us is simply that they started working on it 20 or so years ago, and now that they've finished, they've solved the problem. And I'm encouraged now that it seems like we're starting to work on it as well. I was at the League of Municipalities and heard from the Camden Sewer District that they had a pipe that was made of wood, and it was tongue and groove constructed, and it was still holding up, except for when you have tongue and groove constructions to transport water, it all comes out of the pipe. And they lost something like 20% of their flow just because of tongue and groove wood pipe construction. And I think that's a great example of what has become of our infrastructure, because if it's underground and there's not political and regulatory pressure to change things, then it's easy to not change things. And I've heard about wooden pipes in Newark and other towns up in our area as well. And that's the sort of thing that we really need to address. And why haven't we addressed it? It's because we lack the incentives necessary to make these things happen. And I think there's 4 different incentives that can cause people who have to make these decisions to make better decisions. There's regulatory incentives, there's economic incentives, political incentives, and environmental incentives. So as far as the regulatory incentives go, I think it's a great sign that the Department of Environmental Protection is working on new individual permits for its CSOs. Having read many of the 8 that they've put out so far, with, I would imagine, something like 15 to 20 to go, they are a great improvement, and they have requirements for green infrastructure that I think are going to move a lot of what we've been talking about forward if we get those drafts issued and if they get adopted. And that still remains an open question. For economic incentives, I would like to express our group's support for the stormwater utility bills that Senator Smith has put through. No one is going to, there's not going to be very much, let me say, change about these things until it becomes more or less expensive to change than it is to continue doing things the same way. And when we allow stormwater to discharge into our rivers, funded by taxpayer dollars and with the costs accruing to all of us who use our public trust lands, that divorces the economic incentive from the people who make decisions about stormwater infrastructure and puts all the costs on the people of the state. By having a stormwater utility and allowing towns, if they choose to charge for stormwater contributions to the system, then that can both fund stormwater improvements and cause an incentive for people to do common sense, easily done things to keep water out of storm infrastructure, like just simply grading your parking lot towards the field rather than towards the storm system. We also think that that should be applied to all municipalities and not just to CSO municipalities, because the stormwater infrastructure problems in this state are not limited to CSO municipalities. We have problems up in Bergen County and across the state, I imagine, with flooding. And the reason that it floods, first of all, is because the climate's changing, but second of all, is because we pave so much of the state. And if we can have stormwater adjustments to our infrastructure that keep the water out of the rivers, then maybe we can reduce the flooding and not just the CSO overflows. For political incentives, our organizations, we find it very important to reconnect people with their waterways, and we find that when people are once again experiencing the Meadowlands from Captain Bill's boat or the Bay from Bay Reaper's boat, that they come to understand the value of the resource and can start demanding changes. And sometimes the regulated will respond more quickly to political incentives than they will to regulatory ones. And so we think it's important that this council not support any further changes that the DEP makes that keep people away from their waterways. Our organizations have sued the DEP about their public access rules, in large part because the rules sort of memorialize the inability for people in the urban north of the state to reach their waterways. We think the council should ask for more and greater access capabilities for the people of New Jersey. And finally, the one thing that just makes the least amount of sense, and I want to talk for a minute about the New Jersey DEP's ban of oyster restoration research in area waters. After Sandy, one of the bigger parts of Governor Cuomo's report on the storm was the necessity to reestablish oysters in New York waters. That oysters, first of all, they filter water. They are themselves green infrastructure. A given oyster, just one oyster, can filter 50 gallons of water a day. They take in polluted water, especially water polluted with nutrient-bearing pollutants, and they turn it into oyster flesh and oyster shell, and they build reefs. They have clean water come out the other side, they build structure. The structure provides habitat for sea life, commercially and environmentally important sea life, but at the same time, they create structure within the water that can be important for reducing storm surge. And Governor Cuomo saw the importance of this and how economical it could be to simply allow oysters to return to waters. Unfortunately, in New Jersey, what we have done is perpetuate a ban by the DEP of oyster restoration research in most waters in New York Bay. That just doesn't make sense. And at one point, the department said it was because there were insufficient patrols to stop poaching, but the department has told us since that there are enough patrols now to meet FDA standards. And the idea that this important research continues to be banned when it could be amongst the most cost-effective ways to prevent future storm damage and to clean waters is silly. And we hope that the council will support an overturning of this ban, and that the DEP should overturn it, instead of working against us, work with us to restore oysters to area waters as quickly as possible. Thank you very much.
Stan, do we have any other speakers?
One more gentleman from City Hall.
Joe?
Can't reach your last name.
That's the one.
From the City of Newark, thank you.
Hey, good morning. My name is Joel Sonkin. I'm the city's Chief of Energy and Environment. The City of Newark has been committed to green infrastructure. We see it as being a solution to a number of our problems, specifically aging water infrastructure, urban heat island, air quality issues, flooding, and just general beautification. In the past year, we passed a new stormwater ordinance and are in the process of passing a new master plan, both of which explicitly encourage green infrastructure as a solution. We're also undertaking a number of site-specific green infrastructure interventions. While we appreciate the site-specific work, one of the things that we're really focusing on is trying to get more systemic green infrastructure work done. One of the things that we're doing to accomplish that is our planning staff is currently working on developing a standard manual for green infrastructure best practices. That is something where we would be developing a menu of plug-and-play green infrastructure interventions for both municipalities and private sector use that would document kind of the space required, the amount of stormwater treated, both per dollar spent and per square foot, that we would be able to kind of both use for ourselves and also give to prospective developers. This is something that we probably cannot develop entirely on our own, so any sort of state assistance. My guess is that this has some broad applicability for a number of other cities that would like to do more green infrastructure but really lack the kind of technical expertise to be able to do this on a broad scale. One other area in which we feel that we would need state assistance to do more global green infrastructure work is kind of the much discussed, our inability to charge stormwater impact fees. Recognize that that's not popular amongst a number of people, but our challenge is that really absent being able to charge stormwater fees separate and apart from traditional water fees, we're never going to be able to do it on a broad scale. And particularly the challenge that we have is the way that we currently manage stormwater is through traditional water and sewer fees or through the general fund. In both cases, there is a significant amount of a lack of equity, where basically small businesses and homeowners are being asked to subsidize parking lots and passive storage that contributes a significant amount of stormwater to our system, but pays nothing for the system support. So we urge the state to help with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes today's hearing. By way of follow-up, the council always prepares a report to the department and the commissioner. When that is available, it will be posted on our website. And again, I thank you. Stan, one more housekeeping item?
Yeah, just one more comment, that we'll accept comments until December 31st, written, and they can submit it to the information and not others.
Right. Written comments accepted until December 31st. Thank you so much. Be safe.